Hello students, and welcome back to the lecture series of School of Finance and Commerce. In today's lecture we will discuss about planning. So we are going to discuss the meaning of planning, its nature and significance. After that we will be discussing the process of planning, and at the end we will discuss about types of plans in an organization. So let's get started. Before starting today's lecture, let's have a quick recap. In the previous lecture, we have seen the meaning of management and its function, where we have seen that management is defined as the art of getting things done through others. And then we have discussed its functions, where we have seen that the functions of management can be defined by a keyword or scope, where P stands for planning, O stands for organizing, S for staffing, D for directing, C for coordination, and R for reporting, and at the end B for budgeting. But the most widely accepted functions of management are given by Poons O. Dennell, and he said that the important functions of management are planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. In today's lecture, we will discuss planning in detail as one of the basic function of management. Here are the objectives of today's lecture. We have three main objectives. Objective 1 is to develop a clear understanding of planning as one of the important functions of management. Second one is to familiarize the students with the process and significance of planning in various organizations. And the last objective is to apply the concepts of planning in solving real life problems. So here is the list of topics which I will be covering in today's lecture. We will cover meaning of planning, its nature and significance. After that we will discuss the process of planning in detail, and at the end we will discuss types of planning. So this is our schedule for today's lecture. Okay, now we will discuss the meaning of planning. We all know that every organization, whether it is government owned, private owned business or any other big company, requires planning. The government makes 5-year plans for the country. A small business has its own plans, while other companies have big plans like sales plan, production plan, etc. And all of them have some plans. So all business firms would like to increase their sales and earn more and more profits. All managers dream of these, but to turn these dreams into reality, they need to work hard. And for this, they should do proper planning. They should know what is to be done, how it is to be done, and when it is to be done. Dreams can be turned into reality only if proper planning is done by the managers. That is, they are involved in thinking in advance on what to do and how to do and when to do. This is the essence of planning. So we can say that planning is deciding in advance what is to be done and how it is to be done. It is one of the basic managerial function. Now we are having certain definitions of planning which are given by various authors. Let's discuss these definitions one by one. First is given by Terry. Terry has defined planning in terms of future course of action. That is, planning is the selection and relating of facts and making and using of assumption regarding the future in the visualization and formalization of proposed activities believed necessary to achieve the desired result. Second definition is given by McFarland, and McFarland has defined planning as a concept of executive action that embodies the skills of anticipating, influencing, and controlling the nature and direction of change. Third definition is given by Peter Drucker. He defined as planning is the continuous process of making present entrepreneurial decisions systematically and with best possible knowledge, their futurity, organizing systematically the efforts needed to carry out these decisions and measuring the results of these decisions against the expectations through organized systematic feedback. The last definition is given by Kuntz and O'Donnell. Planning is deciding in advance what to do, how to do, and when to do, and who is to do it. So, we can say that planning bridges the gap between what we are and where we want to be. So, we can say that before doing something, the manager must formulate an idea of how to work and when to work and what is to be done by the team members. So, planning is closely related with creativity and innovation, but the manager would have to set the objectives. Only then will a manager know where he has to go. So, planning seeks to bridge the gap between where we are and where we want to go. Planning is what managers at all levels should do. It requires taking decisions since it involves making a choice from alternative course of action. So, planning thus involves setting objectives and developing appropriate course of actions to achieve these objectives. These objectives provide directions for all managerial decisions and actions. Planning also provides a rational approach for achieving the predetermined objectives. All members therefore need to work towards achieving the goals of organization. These goals set the targets which need to be achieved and against which actual performance is measured. Therefore, planning means setting objectives and targets and formulating an action plan to achieve them. It is concerned with both ends and means, that is, what is to be done and how it is to be done. I hope the meaning of planning is now clear to everyone. Okay, now we will discuss the nature of planning, or we can say features of planning. All the features are mentioned on the slide. The first feature is planning focuses on achieving objectives. All the organizations are set up with a general purpose in view. Specific goals are set out in the plans along with the activities to be undertaken to achieve these goals. Thus, planning is purposeful. Planning has no meaning unless it is contributing to the achievement of goals of organization. So, it always focuses on achieving the objectives of organization. Second feature is planning is a primary function of management, or we can say it's a basic managerial function, as planning lays down the base for other functions of management. So we can say that planning is the first and foremost function of management. All other functions of management are performed within the framework of the plans which are drawn. Thus, planning precedes other functions. So this is also referred to as the primary function of planning, or we can say primacy of planning. The various functions of management are interrelated and they are equally important. However, planning provides the basis for all other functions. Third feature is planning is pervasive. Planning is required at all the levels of management as well as in all the departments of organization. It is not an exclusive function of top management nor of any particular department, but the scope of planning differs at different levels and among different departments. Let's take one example. The top management undertakes planning for the whole organization as a whole, but the middle management does the departmental planning, and at the lowest level the day-to-day operational planning is done by the supervisor. So this is the extent of planning which is done at the different levels. Now we have fourth feature. Fourth feature says that planning is continuous. As plans are prepared for a specific period of time, that is for a month or for a half year or for a particular year. So at the end of that period, there is need for a new plan to be drawn on the basis of new requirement and future conditions. Hence, we can say that planning is a continuous process. Continuity of planning is related with the planning cycle. It means with the plan is framed, it is implemented and is followed by another new plan and so on. So that's why we can say that planning is continuous. Fifth feature is it says that planning is futuristic. So planning is essentially involved in looking ahead and preparing for the future. So the purpose of planning is to meet the future events effectively to the best advantage of an organization. It implies peeping into the future, analyzing it and predicting it. Planning is therefore regarded as a forward-looking function based on future events and forecasting. Through forecasting, future events and conditions are anticipated and plans are drawn accordingly. Thus, for example, sales forecasting is on the basis on which a business is preparing its annual plan for production and sales. Now we have next feature which says that planning involves decision making. Planning essentially involves choice from different alternatives we are having. If there is only one possible goal or a possible course of action, there is no need for planning. We don't need to make a choice among all the alternatives. So the need for planning arises only when alternatives are available. In actual practice, planning presupposes the existence of alternatives. Planning thus involves thorough examination and evaluation of all the alternatives and choosing the most appropriate one. Now, the last feature, it says that planning is a mental exercise. Planning requires application of the mind involving foresight, intelligent imagination, and sound judgment. So, it is basically an intellectual activity of thinking rather than doing because planning determines the action to be taken. However, planning requires logical and systematic thinking rather than guesswork or wishful thinking. In other words, thinking for planning must be orderly and based on the analysis of facts and forecast. That is the beauty of all the features of planning. I hope all these features are clear to you. Now moving on to next slide. Now we will discuss the significance of planning. All the important points of planning are mentioned on the slide and we are going to discuss all these points one by one. Point number one is planning provides direction. By stating in advance how work is to be done, planning provides direction for action. Planning ensures that the goals or the objectives are clearly stated so that they can act as a guide for the steps to be taken. And if the goals and objectives are clearly defined, our employees are aware of what the organization has to do and what they must do in order to achieve these objectives. Departments and individuals in the organization are able to work in coordination only if proper planning is done. And if there was no planning, employees would be working in different directions and organization would not be able to achieve the objectives. Second point is planning reduces the risk of uncertainty. Planning is an activity which enables a manager to look ahead and anticipate the changes. By deciding in advance, planning shows the way to deal with the changes and uncertain events. Changes or the uncertain events, they cannot be eliminated but they can be anticipated and managerial responses to them can be developed. Third significance is planning reduces overlapping and wasteful activities. Planning serves as the basis of coordinating the activities and efforts of different divisions. So it helps in avoiding confusion and misunderstanding. Since planning ensures clarity in thought as well as action, so work is carried on smoothly without any interruption. Useless and redundant activities are minimized or eliminated. It is easier to detect inefficiencies and take the corrective measures to deal with them. Now, the fourth one. The fourth significance is that planning promotes innovative ideas. Since planning is the first function of management, so new ideas can take the shape of concrete plans. It is the most challenging activity as it guides all future actions, leading to growth and prosperity of the business. Now, the fourth one. Fourth point says that planning facilitates decision making. As we know that planning helps the manager to look into the future and make a choice from the various alternatives. The manager has to evaluate each and every alternative and select the best one. So, planning involves setting targets and predicting future conditions, thus helping in taking rational decisions. The last point of significance of planning is that planning establishes standards for controlling. Planning involves setting of goals. The entire managerial process is concerned with accomplishing predetermined goals through planning, organizing, staffing, coordinating, and controlling. Planning provides the goals or standards against which we can measure the actual performance. By comparing actual performance with some standards, manager can know whether they have actually been able to attain the goals or not. If there is any kind of deviation, it can be easily corrected. Therefore, we can say that planning is a prerequisite for controlling. So, if there were no goals and standards, then finding deviations, which are a part of controlling, would not be possible. The nature of corrective action required depends upon the extent of deviation from the standards. Therefore, planning provides the basis of control also. So, this was all about the significance of planning. Now, we will discuss the process of planning. Now, we are going to discuss one of the important topic of today's lecture, that is process of planning. Planning process has certain steps and we will discuss all these steps one by one in detail. So let's discuss step number 1. Step number 1 is establishing objectives or setting objectives. This is the very first step. Every organization has certain objectives and objectives may be set for the entire organization or for the particular department or unit of that organization. The objectives or the goals specify what the company wants to achieve. It could mean an increase in sales by 20%, so which could be the objective of entire organization, and how all departments would contribute to the organizational goal is the plan that is to be drawn up. Objectives should be clearly stated for all the departments, units and employees. They give direction to all the departments, and departments units then need to set their own objectives within the broad framework of the organization's philosophy. Objectives have to percolate down to each unit, employees, and at all the levels. At the same time, manager must contribute ideas and participate in the objective setting process. Now we will discuss step number 2. Step number 2 is developing premises. Actually, planning is concerned with the future, which is uncertain and not sure, and every planner is using conjecture about what might happen in future. Therefore, the manager is required to make certain assumptions about the future. These assumptions are known as premises. Assumptions are the base material upon which plans are to be drawn. The base material may be in the form of forecast, existing plans, or any other past information about policies. The premises or the assumptions must be same for all, and there should be total agreement on them. All managers involved in planning should be familiar with and use the same assumption. For example, forecasting is important in developing premises as it is a technique of gathering information. So, forecast can be made about the demand for a particular product, policy change, interest rates, price of capital goods, and so on. Now, third step is Identifying alternative course of action and then evaluating them. Once the objectives are set and assumptions are made, then the next step would be to act upon them. There may be many ways to act and achieve the objectives. All the alternative course of action should be identified, and the course of action which may be taken could be either routine or innovative. And innovative course of action may be adopted by involving more people and sharing their ideas. If the project is important, then more alternatives should be generated and thoroughly discussed among the members of the organization. So once we have identified all the alternative course of action, then we have to evaluate them. The next step is to weigh the pros and cons of each alternative. Each course will have many variables which have to be weighted against each other. So the positive and negative aspects of each proposal needs to be evaluated in the light of the objective which is to be achieved. In financial plan, for example, the risk-return trade-off is very common. The more risky the investment, the higher the returns, and it is likely to be giving. To evaluate such proposals, detailed calculations of earnings, earning per share, interest, taxes, dividends, etc. are made, and then the decisions are taken. Accurate forecasts in conditions of uncertainty then become vital assumptions for them. So after that we will discuss the next step. Next step is selecting an alternative. So this is the real point of decision making. The best plan has to be adopted and implemented. The ideal plan, of course, would be the most feasible, profitable, and with least negative consequences. So then we have the next step. Next step is implementing the plan. This is the step where other managerial functions also come into the picture. The step is concerned with putting the plan into action, that is, doing what is required. For example, if there is a plan to increase production, then more labor is required, more machinery will be required. This step would also involve organizing for labor and purchase of machinery for the same. Now we have the last step. Last step is review and follow up to see whether the plans are being implemented and activities are performed according to the schedule is also a part of the planning process. Monitoring the plan is equally important to ensure that objectives are achieved. So these were the steps which are involved in the planning process. I hope you have clearly understood all these steps. Now we will discuss the last topic of today's lecture, that is types of plan. An organization has to prepare a plan before making any decision related to business operations or undertaking any project. Plans can be classified into several types depending on the use and the length of planning period. Certain plans have a short-term horizon and helps to achieve the goals of organization. These plans can be classified into single-use plan and standing plan. A single-use plan is developed for a one-time event or a project. Such a course of action is not likely to be repeated in the future. That is, we can say that these plans are meant for non-recurring activities. The duration of this plan may depend upon the type of the project. It may be a week or a month, and a project may sometimes be only of one day, such as organizing an event like a seminar or a conference. These plans include budget, programs, and projects. So we can say that single-use plan includes budget, programs, and projects, and they consist of details including the names of employees who are responsible for doing the work and contributing to the single-use plan. Let's take an example. A program may consist of identifying steps, procedure required for opening a new department to deal with some minor work. Projects are similar to programs but differ in scope and complexity. A budget is a statement of expenses, revenue, and income for a specified period. So that was all about single-use plan. Single-use plan consists of budget, program, and projects. I hope it's clear to you. Now we will discuss standing plan. A standing plan is used for activities that occur regularly over a period of time. It is designed to ensure that internal operations of an organization run smoothly, and such a plan greatly enhances efficiency in routine decision making. It is usually developed once but is modified from time to time to meet the business needs as required. Standing plans include policies, procedures, methods, and rules. And policies are the general forms of standing. Now we will discuss the other types of plan. The first one is objectives. Objectives can be said to be the desired future position that the management would like to reach. The first step in planning is setting objectives. We already know this. So objectives are very basic to the organization, and they are defined as ends with which the management seeks to achieve by its operations. For example, an organization may have an objective of increasing sales volume by 10% or earning a reasonable rate of return on investment, let's say 25%. They represent the end point of planning. So that is the objective. Second one is a strategy. A strategy provides the broad contours of an organization business. It will also refer to future decisions defining the organization's direction and scope in the long run. So we can say strategy is a comprehensive plan for accomplishing an organization's objectives. This plan will include three dimensions. First, determining long-term objectives. Second, adopting a particular course of action. And third, allocating resources necessary to achieve the objectives. Third one is policy. Policies are the general statements that guide thinking and channelize energies towards a particular direction. Policies provide a basis for interpreting their strategy, which is usually stated in general terms. They are guides to managerial action and decisions in the implementation of a strategy. For example, the company may have a recruitment policy and pricing policy within which the objectives are set and established, and accordingly the decisions are made. If there is an established policy, it becomes easier to resolve problems or issues. As such, a policy is the general response to a particular problem or a situation. Next is procedures. Procedures are the routine steps on how to carry out the activities. They detail the exact manner in which any work is to be performed. They are specified in a chronological order. For example, there may be a procedure for requisitioning supplies before production. Procedures are specified steps to be followed in particular circumstances. They are generally meant for insiders to follow, and the sequence or steps or actions to be taken are generally to enforce a policy or to attain predetermined objectives. So policies and procedures are interlinked with each other, and procedures are the steps to be carried out within a broad policy framework. Now, next is method. Method provides the prescribed ways or manner in which a task has to be performed considering the objective. It deals with a task comprising one step of a procedure and specify how this step is to be performed. The method may vary from task to task. Selection of proper method saves time, money, and effort and increases the efficiency of an organization. So let's take the example for imparting training to employees at various levels from top management to supervisory level. Different methods can be adopted. For example, for higher level management, orientation program, lectures and seminars can be organized, whereas at the supervisory level, the job on the job training methods and work oriented methods are appropriate. Next is rule. Rules are specific statements that tell what is to be done. They do not allow for any flexibility or discretion. It reflects a managerial decision that a certain action must be or must not be taken. They are usually the simplest type of plan, and because there is no compromise or change unless a policy decision is taken. Next we have program. Programs are the detailed statements about a project which outline the objectives, policies, procedures, rules, tasks, human and physical resources required and the budget to implement any course of action. Program will include the entire gamut of activities as well as the organization's policy and how it will contribute to the overall business plan. The minutest details are worked out, that is, procedures, rules, budget within the broad policy framework. Now we have the last term, which is budget. Budget is a statement of expected results expressed in numerical terms. It is a plan which quantifies facts and figures. So, for example, a sales budget may forecast the sales of different products in each area for a particular month. A budget may also be prepared to show the number of workers required in the factory at the peak production time. So these were the different types of plan which we have discussed right now. And here is the list of references which I have used in preparing this video lecture. Now I would like to wind up the session here only. Thank you and have a nice day.